Welcome back to the Linux Academy Nginx Deep Dive. In this video and the next video, we're going to take a look at how we can utilize Nginx as a reverse proxy still, but utilizing it to load balance to multiple application servers. These servers can be on the same machine, like we're going to demonstrate right here, or they could be on separate machines and you could access them through IP address. But we really want to be able to balance the traffic between multiple different servers if we have scaled out horizontally in that way, and Nginx has the means to do that baked right in. To get started, we need multiple instances of the same application running. And for that, we're going to use our web client that is used in our photos.example.com. And what we're going to do is we're going to just create separate instances of the service. So we'll use CP to make some copies here. And we'll do the web client, and then with some shell expansion, we can just go from having nothing to being web client 2, and also web client 3. This service is already made to work with a port, and by default, it's listening on port 3000, so we're going to make some modifications to this to change the port for each of these services so that we can pretend that they're completely separate servers. In reality, they're separate applications running on the same physical server, but they could be separate servers all the same. Let's first take a look at web client 2. And for this, we want to add another environment variable here. So we'll say environment port, and then we'll set this to be 3100. And we can save this file and quit, and then we'll do the exact same thing with web service 3, and we'll just give it a different number. For this one, I'm going to use 3101. 3101. Let's start and enable these services. With our extra services running, we're now ready to actually modify our configuration for photos.example.com to have this be a load balanced service. And to do that, we have to work outside of our server because what we're creating is going to be a pool of servers. And in Nginx, we're going to utilize the upstream module in order to do this. And you can see here that it's used to define a group of servers that can be referenced via proxy pass, fast CGI pass, etc., etc. And that's exactly what we need to do here. So we create something using an upstream directive outside of our server block. And then inside, there's a different type of server directive that is unique to the upstream context here that allows us to specify these different servers. And it can point to completely different servers using domain. It can use IP addresses. We can also have a server be a Unix socket in here. And then if you remember back to our proxy pass, you could do http:// and then have this extra Unix:/. So it still makes sense. We're just not going to pull the HTTP portion in here because that's really part of either the proxy pass that's going to speak that, or if we separate these out to where they're doing it with just the domain or IP address or Unix socket, then it'll still work with fast CGI pass or uWSGI pass. Let's go back and add our upstream. Whoops. So we'll say upstream, and then this is going to be called photos, and that's us naming what this particular group of servers is going to be called. And then we reference them each by doing server, and then we give it however it's going to be accessed, which for the same one we have right now on this proxy pass line, we're going to take the domain out of this, which is in this case is going to be an IP address really, and then the port, and that will be the entire thing. And instead of having this IP address and port right here, we can reference photos. And that's going to make sense. And we don't need to have a specific server that we're pointing to so that we can have multiples. Now we can come in here and change this so that we have our 3100 and our 3101. If we save this, everything we've changed right there created a server group using upstream, using the server directive inside of upstream just to define it, and then modifying our proxy pass to utilize the name of the server group instead of an individual server. Let's save and quit out of this. Make sure we didn't change anything that's going to break it. and reload Nginx. If we utilize systemctl status and then we access web client 1 or 2 or 3, well, I guess it's just web client here, you can see any requests that were made. There was a request made at 20 hours here, but if we go and we look at web client 2, you'll see that there have been no GET requests made just yet. So what we can do is we can utilize curl and give it a header of host photos.example.com and go to localhost, and we'll do this exact same request multiple times to see what happens. It's 2 times, run this a 3rd time, and a 4th time. And now we can check out all of these. So we'll do systemctl status of web client. And we can see that we made a request at 8:23 and then also at 8:34. But if we check out client 2, you can see that we made an intermediate request there that was at 8:27. So we went from going to web client 1 to web client 2. And then in between the 27 and the 34 up here, we had a 31 right here. So you can see that what it's doing there is distributing the traffic based on whichever one was the last one. And that's because the load balancing that is done through the upstream module has different load balancing methods that you can utilize. And by default, you're going to utilize a round robin approach. So if you have 4 servers and 5 requests come in, the first one's going to go to server 1, second one to server 2, server 3 gets the 3rd one, server 4 gets the 4th one, and then you go back around. So the 5th one would go to server 1. Let's take one last look at our configuration. There's more that we can do with a load balancer if you just look at the documentation here. Unfortunately, this is one of the areas that Nginx Plus actually adds a lot of features, and those still show up in our directive listing here. So there's stuff in here that we cannot use using the open source version of Nginx right now. But just looking at what we do have, we're able to define a list of servers and then utilize that in place of a single server when we're using Nginx as a reverse proxy. In the next video, we'll take a look at how we can make modifications to our upstream context in order to manipulate how it decides to route traffic to different servers and see how the various load balancing methods work.